Hi, welcome back to more coverage from CES 2013. I'm here with George from Corsair, and next to George is a truly gigantic chassis, the Obsidian 900D.
Yeah.
George, this is just ridiculously big.
Yeah.
So, for the ultra enthusiast, what can you fit in this?
Actually, it's probably easier to list of things that you can't fit in it. 560 radiators, sorry guys. But no, you can fit 480 radiators, you can fit 420 radiators. It can hold up to a total of 5 different radiators. So I'll give you kind of a rundown real quick. We'll go through the features. Sure. This is a prototype, so there's some things on it that aren't final, like this window's a little bit faded. That's going to be fixed. But it has the same push-button side panel release that the 800D had. You push a button in the back and just pull it off, and the window comes off. This is one we've kind of optimized for more of a standard setup, like an air cooling setup. We haven't done a bunch of radiators in this one because we didn't want to lug it all the way to CES with all the rads in it. But effectively, this case is set up so you have a direct airflow path from the front to the 2 graphics cards and a ton of airflow around it with exhaust, and then up top you have some more exhaust. This one has an H100i installed with 4 fans on it, the SP120s, and then you have 2 more as exhaust on the top. Down on bottom, this part just flips out open, and there's a removable magnetic dust filter that goes here. This part actually can mount a 420 or 480 radiator. You can also fit a 420 or 480 radiator up here. On the other side, when you have the power supply installed, you can put a 240 in there, or a 360 or 240 in the front as well. And on this side, you can do push-pull and real thick rads. So you have about 100 millimeters of space for that kind of push-pull spacing, which is pretty nice. And then in the front, you have the 3 120s that come with the case to push cold air across it and across the hard drives. So that's pretty cool. And one of those bays for the hard drives is hot swap as well. And
given that the PSU is mounted sideways, there's room for a second one, it looks like.
Yeah, you can put a second PSU if you want to do dual PSUs. So the one PSU is mounted here. You can choose which one you want to use, or you can just put 2 PSUs in there. All the cables are run right behind the behind the motherboard, like we always do in all our cases. The cable routing grommets are still there, so we use all that stuff. There's actually some latches that we used on the C70, some plastic latches that keep the cables in space, but we beefed them up a bit because we know that a guy with this size of case will probably have more cables and more components, so they're a little bit stronger and more robust. It's also got full tool-free stuff on the optical drive bays, on the hard drive bays. It just comes out like this and slides back in and locks into place. So we thought about also a lot of the ID on the inside of the case too, so the inside looks good as well as the outside. So we spent a lot of time thinking about even little things like which way this bend goes and what the cutout shape for the fans look like here, things like that.
So the 800D was a truly gigantic case. To give it some kind of context, how much bigger is this?
This is about 15 to 20% bigger across the board. So the 800D was 24 inches by 24 inches by 9, and this is like around 26 by 27 by 10. So it's significantly bigger, and if you put it next to an 800D, you'll notice that. But it's not just that the size that's there. The size is there because you want a lot more radiator space, and we added 10 slots in the back instead of the 7 that we had before. Stuff like that, and fits HPTX boards. But the size gives you the ability to fit the extra radiators and things like that, which is what we really wanted to do. So we basically put together a list of functions and a list of features, and then we said, okay, well, how can we make this case the best we can? And some of the complaints, about the 800D that people had before was, you can fit a 360, that's great, but I'd like to be able to fit more. So we kind of went overboard with it. And then on this, the other thing we heard was, the 800D is great, but I'd like it to be built more of aluminum or fully out of aluminum. We didn't feel like fully aluminum made a lot of sense for the cost structure. We would have been around $500, $600 if we had done it full aluminum. But these superstructures on the front and rear are actually cast aluminum, and that adds a lot of strength without adding a huge amount of weight to it. It's already a very heavy case. If we'd made those out of steel, they would have been really, really even heavier. And if we'd made them out of plastic, the case would have just flexed like crazy. So we wanted that kind of rigidity and strength to it without having that. And all filters are dust filtered, all intakes are dust filtered as well.
So you've spoken about radiators, and obviously if you go for a case of this size, you should be liquid cooling your stuff. If you don't, how many fans can you fit in here?
You can put around 15 fans in it without any radiators at all. And then when you do radiators, because you can go push-pull, you can actually kind of go above that. So on the front right now, we have 3 120s. but you can actually fit another fan on the back of that hard drive cage for push-pull through your hard drive cage, and that makes it much more efficient to push air through those cages, which are usually very restrictive. So if you get the airflow on the other side, your air moves much more effectively through that cage. So we cut the opening as big as we could, and we put fan mounts on there, so you could even go kind of crazy and make that work.
Given its huge size and given the components out today and what you can see down the road, can you see a need for even bigger chassis?
You know, you never say never, but I don't expect that we'll see a lot of need for much, much larger chassis. I think that we'll see in a few years where people say maybe 560 millimeter radiators become the norm and we have to make a bigger case, or maybe, you know, someone comes out with a really good 400 or 600 millimeter radiator that uses 200 millimeter fans, so we may have to retool or something. But in the meantime, right now, the vast majority of water cooling guys are using 120 base, so 120s, 240s, 360s, 480s. 140s are getting a little more popular, so you see 140s, 280s, and 420s. You don't see so many 560s, and by the time you get to that point, the rad costs $200-300 by itself sometimes. So a case that costs $350, that guy's probably going to go with a more specialized thing like a Case Labs or a Mountain Mods or something like that, because he's really decided he's going to spend a couple $1,000 on water cooling. And we're trying to get more kind of the guy who's like, look, I want to build a really good case. I may want to do some water cooling. I may even want to do really good water cooling. But if you're the kind of guy who wants to build the most ridiculous water cooling rig in the world, we can help you out, but you're probably going to want something more custom.
Yeah, so you just alluded to the price. It's going to be $350.
Yeah.
When can people buy it?
It's going to be late February, early March, depending on the region you're in. So I would expect that you'll see it in the channel around that time frame.
And this is a 900D. Will there be a replacement for the 800?
The 800 is going to stay around for a while until people stop buying it. My guess is that the minute this thing comes out, kind of new buyers won't be buying the 800 so much, because for a $50 price premium, you get a lot more feature set. And I don't think that there's a lot of guys who look at the 800D and be like, oh, I love that, but I hate this. I think you'll get a lot of guys who look at the 800D, I love that, but I really love that. And for $50, you know, it's a big purchase. If I were to tell you you could get a 680 instead of a 670 for $50 difference, everyone would buy a 680, right? So it's the same kind of mentality. I think that a lot of people will just stop buying the 800 because this comes out.
Well, thanks very much, George.
No problem.
So that's the Obsidian 900D. It's truly huge. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so do let us know in the forums.